Where in the world is Ellen?
G'day, mates. This is Ellen and...
My name is Tony James Slater, and I am in Somerset in England, in UK.
And I'm in Columbus, Ohio. Today we're going to be talking about breaking down in Australia. My first story is that I was living in Melbourne, Australia during their winter. I thought this was a great idea as I was leaving the hot, sweltering, tropical equator of South America and wanted to wear some jeans for a bit and not sweat when I did things like brush my teeth. To be fair, Melbourne was beautiful when I first arrived in April. But as soon as I found a job, apartment, friends, which all happened on the same day weirdly, the weather changed and the thermometer dipped to 5 degrees Celsius, which is 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Which would be fine unless your house and work has no heat. Why do we need heat, mate? It's only cold this week. It'll warm up, they lied. Even though my apartment was right on the beach, and even though I had heaps of friends and a waitressing job that I semi-enjoyed, my seasonal depression hit me full force in mid-May. It was actually a lot harder than normal because all my friends up in the Northern Hemisphere were finally seeing summer and couldn't be bothered to help somebody with seasonal depression out of their pit of despair. I would also like to rant just about how cold it actually was. I consider myself pretty well acclimatized. I moved to Edmonton, Alberta the day that it dipped to minus 40. Fun fact, minus 40 is the same in Fahrenheit and Celsius. I survived living in Houston, Texas with an on-again, off-again relationship with my shitty aircon, even when it was 106 in the shade in July. I played in the snow growing up, as you do, and I survived 2 Boston nor'easters without wearing shoes. Don't even ask about that one. I thought I could handle little old Melbourne, whose weather is very similar to Seattle, where I've spent several winters. I was right and wrong. The weather is better than Seattle. It doesn't rain as much and it's sunnier, but I was wrong in thinking about the heating and insulation being common practice. So I developed some ways to get warm. Like 1, lure a cat into bed with you with bacon and cuddle him to death. 2, run or exercise. 3, take scalding hot showers. 4, drink tea with brandy, the booze, not the girl. 5, ride the metro and squish up next to some fat dude. 6, go to a pizza restaurant and sit as close as you can to the oven. Order water, free smells. So I tried all that I could think of, and finally admitted to myself that I was having a full-on mental breakdown from seasonal depression. I finally did number 7, book myself a trip to Cairns. The day arrived, I stepped off the plane, and instantly my skin did this weird thing. Liquid was oozing out of it. I asked someone behind me what was happening. He was like, you're sweating. So like I said, on today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about breaking down in Australia. I want to change up my podcast where it's not just about me. I know, I can totally hear your disappointment. It's going to be okay. Just trust me, because I had the privilege of interviewing one of my favorite travel writers, Tony James Slater. He's a 3-time author who actually inspired me to start traveling. He wrote this book called That Bear Ate My Pants a while ago. I posted a blog about it, but I wanted to ask him about his time to Australia. So he first moved to Australia because he was in the army, about to be deployed to Iraq. So he took a quick vacation to Thailand.
What actually happened was I wrote about it as a book in the middle called Don't Need the Whole Dog, about my trip to Thailand and that. And basically, finally I ran out of money and I couldn't actually afford to fly back to England because I'd run out of money. So my sister was in Australia and she said, hey, well, Australia's closer. Surely it's cheaper to fly here. I can sub you the money. And so she did, and that was it. That was why I ended up in Australia.
He applied for the work holiday visa, got on a plane, met his sister Jill and her best friend Rue. The girls had bought this van named Rusty, and as soon as Tony got there, they got the hell out of Perth, and they were vacationing up in Broome, which just sounds like heaven on earth. But they couldn't stay there. Getting short on funds was ruining their trip.
The single biggest worry was money, because we were actually heading, this was the last leg of our journey before we got up to the north in the Northern Territory of Australia, where there's all the fruit picking jobs. And we were running low on funds, like seriously low on funds, especially me. I'd arrived flat broke from Thailand and we'd gone on this road trip.
So they headed out of Broome, and then this thing happened. Just letting you know, this is an excerpt from Tony's book, but it also has cursing in it, so that's my warning.
We were cruising along at top speed when there was an almighty bang, and the car slew across the road. It would have been right in the path of the oncoming traffic, except we hadn't seen another car for almost an hour. Suddenly we were skidding, swerving, and someone was screaming, "Oh fuck! 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 Sit back!" Back to the right side of the road, Rusty slowed to a halt as Ruth smoothly applied the brakes, and we sat there for a few seconds in a swirling cloud of red dust, and just caught our breath. "Everyone okay?" I asked the girls. They were both staring at me. "Ah, so that's who'd been doing the screaming." "Did we explode?" I asked. A little, but don't worry, it's just a blowout," said Rue. "A blowout of what?" "A tyre."
The closest town to get a replacement was in a place called...
Halls Creek is the name of the place, and we named it Hell's Crack.
Now, I think this is a great time to mention Australia's geography. Even though it's about the same size as the United States, most of it is barren desert.
It's when you go up into the north of Western Australia, it becomes sort of pure barren. It's bushland, it's scrub, there's just nothing there. You know, the towns are like old Wild West towns, and there are actually ghost towns there, you know, prospecting towns that people lived in and then vanished. And I think Halls Creek is pretty much one of those places. It probably existed from some sort of gold rush or something back in the day, and then anybody who had half a brain left it, and the rest of them are still there. So it's this hellish place.
For most of the year, the temperatures are in the high 40s, or 115 plus in Fahrenheit.
It's one of the furthest places from any source of water, any coastline or anything like that. Several days' drive from the coast to the north and from the coast to the west. It's just this dry, dusty place.
The locals in this town weren't exactly the most pleasant. Without going too much into it, the Aboriginals, native people to Australia,
still got quite a proud tradition, and a lot of them live on sort of reservations, and they live traditionally as they used to. And a lot of them have integrated into modern society, and they live much like everybody else in modern society. But with any sort of marginal people, I guess, there's sort of some unfortunate people who slip through the cracks, and there's quite a lot of them, and they congregate in places like Halls Creek.
When I was traveling through the middle of Australia, I see a lot of these towns where Aboriginals are just queued up around the bottle shops. And you think, all they do is drink, fight, sleep, rinse, and repeat.
So we used to stay in the caravan site there with our car being fixed. And all we could hear all night was the Aboriginals screaming at each other, shouting death curses. And we thought we'd go out and there'd just be bodies littering the ground outside the campsite. You know, it was that violent. But there was nothing, because it is mostly just sort of posturing and tribal feuds going on and stuff. But it was absolutely terrifying.
So you can imagine Tony, Jill, and Rue's happiness when Rusty's tire was finally fixed, and they got to get the hell out of Dodge, or Halls Creek.
An hour out of town, Rue started swearing under her breath. This was very unlike her, from what I knew so far, and enough to be of concern. But even more concerning was the fact that I couldn't quite see her anymore. The air in Rusty was rarely what you would call wholesome, but this time it had a definite opaque quality to it. To put it another way, Rue was engulfed in smoke. "I'm going to have to pull over," she said, tension in her voice. "The temperature is off the gauge. I think we've got a problem." The words had barely left her lips when there was a clunk from somewhere beneath us, followed by a regular clicking, as of two metal things hitting against each other. I have a fairly limited experience of cars, but as I understand it, this sort of noise is rarely a good thing. There was a rest stop just ahead. Rue coasted into it and brought Rusty to a shuddering halt.
We pulled over at the side of the road. Rue, with her vast experience, coasted us into a little lay-by. It was the only lay-by we'd seen for, an hour. There was just nothing. Long straight road, disappears into the heat haze in the distance. Nothing on either side of us, nothing in either direction. And we pulled up, and there's one tree, one gnarled little tiny tree in this lay-by, and we sort of coasted the van to a halt underneath, and we got out and we opened the seat because the engine was underneath the front seat, and the smoke just poured out, and we thought, well, this probably isn't good. And so we'd boiled up, and we'd boiled up before, but this seemed like a pretty bad one. And eventually we flagged down a passing car, and the guy was one of these rough and ready Australian outbacksmen, and they sort of know their stuff. So he came and he looked in the engine and he put his hands in there and he fiddled about a bit, and there's a crunch, and he pulled out a fan and he said, I think I found your problem. This is supposed to be attached. And we thought, well, it was until you just pulled it out, mate.
So when this happens, there really isn't much that you can do.
Absolutely no phone signal. It's not a case of waving it round and taking 2 steps to the left. There's just, you pass beyond a zone sort of 20 miles out of town, and that's it. No phone signal for the next 100 miles. So we don't have a satellite phone or anything like that. There's obviously no email or no possibility of that. So we're just, reduced to flagging down cars. So we flagged down another car, and that guy said he would tell the RAC bloke in the local town about our problem.
For our American listeners, RAC is the Australian equivalent to the AAA.
And he came back a bit later and brought us some ice, and we just set up the tent under the shelter of this one gnarled tree and lay in there. And we were there for 3 days by the side of the road. Eventually the police came out to rescue us, and they said, we keep getting reports of you guys out here on the road. And we're like, you think? And they said, so what's the deal? And we said, well, the RAC guy, as far as we know, is aware. And the police said, yeah, well, we've gone and had a word with him. He does know about you, but he's not coming to get you. So we were like, well, fine, thank you. And they said, so we've decided to take you back in ourselves because it's too dangerous to leave you out here, really. And we're like, well, that's nice. We've been out here for 3 days, but it's nice that you recognise by this point that it's kind of dangerous.
Apparently, the RAC guy had a tow truck whose front half was completely missing. Completely missing. Like no hood, no windscreen, no lights, just an engine on a frame. It's quite dangerous to drive at all, let alone out of town, and definitely not at night. But finally, the toothless geezer decided he would drive Tony, Jill, and Rue out to their car.
Complaining the whole way, and picked up the van and brought it back, and then quoted us a ridiculous amount of money to get it fixed. So we pushed it through town, just pushed it to the nearest garage. He said there was no other garage, and we knew he was lying because, we'd walked around town. So he pushed it to the only other garage, and they quoted us a slightly more reasonable price, and then we just left it with them. And then we spent a week waiting, camping in Hell's Crack, trying to survive while our van was repaired.
Tony is an amazing author. He wrote all about his crazy adventure in a book called Kamikaze Kangaroos, 20,000 miles around Australia, 1 van, 2 girls, and an idiot. You can get it on Amazon on your Kindle today. Thanks to Matt Foster and Stephen Cox for their voiceover work. I have more about Tony, Matt, and Australia on my blog at ellenlurie.com. So go sign up for my newsletter so you're not missing out on any great adventure stories, which I also wanted to mention, because now I'm so inspired to call up people that have inspired me and ask them about their latest adventures. So if you have great adventures, or if you just want to comment on this podcast, you can leave a review or a rating or write me an email at ln.lurie@yahoo.com. Let me know what you think. Thanks.